Dawn broke over Savannah like honey dripping from a spoon, slow and sweet, casting golden light through centuries-old Spanish moss that draped the oak trees like nature's own lace curtains. Inside a modest apartment on the east side of town, Ivy Louise Monroe was already awake, her hands covered in flour as she prepared the day's first batch of pastries. "Just 5 more minutes, babe," she whispered, glancing at the small bedroom where her 5-year-old son Theo still slept peacefully. The morning light caught the silver chain around her neck, a simple pendant with a tiny star charm she'd saved 3 months to buy, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always light to be found. The kitchen timer chimed softly, and Ivy pulled out a tray of peach hand pies, their edges perfectly crimped, golden brown and glistening. The scent of butter, vanilla, and fresh peaches filled their small kitchen, mixing with the morning air drifting in through the cracked window. She'd been up since 4 a.m., preparing these for the little sweet corner, the bakery where she worked. Each pie represented another step toward stability, another brick in the foundation she was building for Theo's future. "Mommy!" A sleepy voice called from the doorway. Theo stood there in his rocket ship pajamas, his light brown curls wild from sleep, clutching his prized possession, a silver pendant with intricate constellation patterns that had been a gift from his grandmother before she passed. "Good morning, Starshine." Ivy wiped her hands on her apron and knelt to his level. "Ready for our morning adventure?" Theo's green eyes lit up, matching her own. "Can we count the stars tonight? I learned about Orion's belt yesterday." "Of course we can, baby." She ruffled his hair, ignoring the familiar ache in her chest. Some days, she wished she could give him more than stargazing sessions and hand-me-down books about space. But Theo never complained. He found magic in everything, just like she used to at his age. The morning routine was a well-choreographed dance, breakfast, oatmeal with brown sugar for Theo, black coffee and a piece of toast for Ivy, getting dressed, tiny sneakers for him, worn but clean jeans and a simple blouse for her, and packing bags, his beloved space-themed backpack, her large tote filled with extra uniforms and emergency snacks. "Remember, Mrs. Wilson is picking you up from school today," Ivy reminded him as they rushed down the creaking stairs of their apartment building. "Mommy has to work late at the bakery." "Because of the big order?" Theo asked, carefully holding his constellation pendant as they walked. He always played with it when he was thinking, a habit that made Ivy's heart squeeze with love. "That's right, clever boy. The Richardson wedding needs 500 cupcakes." She checked her watch, 6:45 a.m. They needed to hurry to catch the subway that would take them across town. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of magnolia blooms and the distant sound of early morning traffic. The subway station was crowded with the usual mix of early morning commuters. Ivy held Theo's hand tightly as they navigated through the sea of suits and briefcases. They barely made it onto the train, squeezing into the last available space. Theo yawned, the early hour finally catching up with him. "Come here, baby." Ivy lifted him onto her lap as they found seats, his warm weight familiar and comforting. The gentle rocking of the train combined with her exhaustion from the early morning baking made her eyelids heavy. Just for a moment, she thought, letting her head rest against what she assumed was the window. But it wasn't the window. In her fatigue-induced haze, Ivy had leaned against something firm yet unexpectedly comfortable. The subtle scent of expensive cologne, something woodsy and sophisticated, registered in her consciousness just as Theo's weight shifted, his own head finding a resting place against the same surface. That's when she felt it, the slight movement of breathing. Horror dawned slowly as Ivy realized they were both leaning against someone's shoulder. Her eyes flew open, meeting a startling pair of steel blue ones that watched her with an unreadable expression. The man they'd inadvertently used as a pillow was the epitome of corporate success. His charcoal suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, and his dark hair was styled in that perfectly imperfect way that screamed, "expensive haircut." But it was his face that caught her attention, strong jawline softened by the hint of a 5 o'clock shadow, and a small scar through his right eyebrow that somehow made him seem more human. "I'm so sorry." Ivy straightened up quickly, her cheeks burning. She moved to wake Theo, but the stranger subtly shook his head. "Let him sleep," he said quietly, his voice deep and unexpectedly gentle. "We have 3 more stops." The kindness in his gesture made her throat tight. She wanted to say something, thank him maybe, or apologize again, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she watched as his gaze drifted to Theo, softening almost imperceptibly at the sight of the sleeping child. For the next 10 minutes, they sat in a strange bubble of silence, surrounded by the usual subway cacophony but somehow separate from it. The stranger didn't move, didn't check his obviously expensive phone, didn't do anything except sit perfectly still, as if afraid to disturb Theo's peaceful sleep. When their stop approached, Ivy gently shook Theo awake. "Come on, baby. Time for school." Theo blinked sleepily, looking up at the stranger with curious eyes. "Your shoulder was comfy," he said with the unfiltered honesty of a child, causing the man's lips to twitch in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Thank you," Ivy managed to say as they stood, gathering their bags. "And sorry again." The stranger nodded, that almost smile still playing at the corners of his mouth. As they hurried off the train, Ivy could feel his eyes following them. She didn't look back, couldn't look back, but something felt different about that morning, as if the universe had shifted ever so slightly on its axis. What she didn't see was Theo's precious constellation pendant slipping from his pocket as they rushed away, landing silently on the subway floor. And she didn't see the stranger, Rowan Blackwell, though she didn't know his name yet, picking it up, running his thumb over the intricate star patterns with a thoughtful expression. Later that evening, as Ivy worked on the seemingly endless wedding order, her hands moving mechanically as she piped delicate rosettes onto cupcakes, her mind kept drifting back to that morning, to the unexpected kindness of a stranger, to the way he'd let them rest, to those observant blue-gray eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. "Earth to Ivy," Harper Sullivan's voice broke through her reverie. Her best friend and fellow baker waved a hand in front of her face. "That's the third lopsided rose you've made. What's going on in that head of yours?" Ivy blinked, looking down at the less-than-perfect cupcake. "Nothing. Just tired." She scraped off the frosting to start again. "Had to be here extra early this morning." Harper raised an eyebrow, her dark curls bouncing as she tilted her head. "Uh-huh. And this has nothing to do with that dreamy look you've been wearing all day." "There's no dreamy look," Ivy protested, focusing intently on her piping bag. "I'm thinking about Theo. He was so excited about stargazing tonight, but I'm stuck here until closing." "Mrs. Wilson said she'd take him out back to look at the stars," Harper reminded her gently. "That woman loves him like her own grandson." Ivy nodded, but her heart ached. She imagined Theo pointing out constellations to Mrs. Wilson, clutching his beloved pendant, and then froze. "Harper, did Theo wear his necklace home yesterday?" "I don't know, honey. I didn't see him after school." "Why?" But Ivy was already pulling out her phone, dialing Mrs. Wilson's number with shaking fingers. When the older woman confirmed that Theo didn't have his pendant, Ivy felt her stomach drop. That necklace was one of the few things they had left from her mother. Theo would be devastated. As she ended the call, a text from Mrs. Wilson came through. "Don't worry, dear. We'll retrace your steps tomorrow. It has to be somewhere, in a city of nearly 150,000 people, on a subway car that had probably made dozens of trips since this morning, carrying thousands of passengers." Ivy looked down at her own star pendant, its silver surface catching the fluorescent bakery lights. She thought of the stranger on the train, of that moment of connection that now felt like a dream. "It'll turn up," Harper said, squeezing her shoulder. "Things have a way of finding their way back to where they belong." Ivy managed a small smile, but her mind was already racing through all the places the pendant could be. She didn't know then that it was safely tucked in the pocket of an expensive suit jacket, or that its temporary guardian was sitting in his penthouse office, staring out at the Savannah skyline, thinking about a sleepy little boy and his mother who smelled like peaches and vanilla. The stars were particularly bright that night, but neither Ivy nor Rowan was looking at them. Sometimes the most important constellations are the ones we don't see forming, the invisible lines drawing two people together, one missed connection at a time. Rowan Blackwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, rolling the silver constellation pendant between his fingers. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Savannah's historic district, highlighting the contrast between the modern glass towers of the business district and the old-world charm of the city below. His reflection stared back at him. Impeccable suit, carefully styled dark hair, the very image of success and loneliness. "Mr. Blackwell?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board members are waiting in the conference room." He slipped the pendant into his pocket, where it had rested since that morning on the subway. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Lucy." The weight of the silver pendant against his thigh felt disproportionately heavy for such a small object. He couldn't shake the image of the sleeping boy, curls wild and innocent, clutching it even in his dreams. Or the mother, with her messy bun and flour-dusted jeans, who'd looked at him with such genuine embarrassment and gratitude. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy as he entered. 8 board members in expensive suits straightened in their chairs, papers rustling. Rowan took his place at the head of the table, his expression neutral. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the authority that came from years of dealing with people who underestimated him. "Let's discuss the New York expansion." For 2 hours, he led the meeting with precision and focus, but his hand kept drifting to his pocket, touching the pendant like a talisman. When the board finally filed out, his childhood friend and CFO, Oliver Wright, lingered behind. "Okay, what's going on?" Oliver leaned against the conference table, loosening his tie. "You've been distracted all day." "You never get distracted." Rowan considered deflecting, but Oliver had known him since they were 10, back when Rowan's mother was still alive and the world seemed less sharp-edged. "I met someone, or rather, I didn't meet them." Oliver's eyebrows shot up. "This sounds nothing like the story I expected. What happened to relationships are inefficient?" "It's not." Rowan ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling. "There was a woman on the subway this morning, with her son." "You took the subway?" Oliver's surprise was justified. Rowan usually drove his Tesla, or had his driver take him in the company car. "The parking garage is under maintenance." Rowan pulled out the pendant, letting it catch the light. "The boy dropped this. I've been trying to figure out how to return it." Oliver stepped closer, examining the intricate constellation patterns. "You could turn it into the transit authorities lost and found." "No." The response came too quickly, too forcefully. Rowan cleared his throat. "I mean, it clearly has sentimental value. It should be returned personally." "Right." Oliver's knowing smile made Rowan want to throw something at him, just like when they were kids. "This has nothing to do with the pretty mom who fell asleep on your shoulder." Rowan's glare could have frozen coffee, but Oliver just laughed. "Lucy mentioned you asked her to check the subway camera footage, to identify them for returning the pendant," Rowan said stiffly. "Of course." Oliver straightened his tie, heading for the door. "Just remember, not everything in life needs to be handled like a hostile takeover. Sometimes the best things happen when we let go of control." Alone again, Rowan returned to his office. The pendant felt warm from being held so long. He should be reviewing quarterly reports, preparing for tomorrow's meetings, or at least returning some of the dozens of emails demanding his attention. Instead, he found himself searching constellation patterns on his laptop. The pendant's design wasn't just decorative. It showed actual constellations, accurately mapped. Orion's Belt, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia. He remembered the boy's pajamas, covered in rocket ships, a space enthusiast. Then, like Rowan himself had been, before his mother's death made him turn away from such whimsical interests. "Mr. Blackwell," Lucy's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I have the information you requested about the subway passengers." He straightened in his chair, professional mask sliding back into place. "Come in." Lucy entered with a tablet, her efficiency as polished as her appearance. The woman and child boarded at East Savannah Station at 7:05 a.m. They exited at Abercorn Street Station at 7:35 a.m. The boy was wearing a backpack with the logo of Riverside Elementary. And the woman? She was carrying what appeared to be a baker's box. "There are 3 bakeries within walking distance of their exit station." Lucy handed him the tablet with a map marked with locations: the Little Sweet Corner, Magnolia's Finest, and Baker's Haven. Rowan studied the map, remembering the faint scent of peaches and vanilla that had clung to the woman's clothes. "Thank you, Lucy. That will be all." After she left, he stood by the window again, watching the sun set over Savannah. The city transformed at this hour, historic buildings glowing amber in the fading light, streets coming alive with evening energy. Somewhere out there, a little boy was probably missing his pendant, and a mother was trying to comfort him. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia Winters, his ex-fiancée. "Dinner tonight? We should talk about us." 6 months ago, he'd found her in bed with his former business partner. The betrayal had been professional as much as personal. They'd been planning to take control of a significant portion of his company's shares. Now she was back in Savannah, making overtures about reconciliation that felt more like corporate negotiations than matters of the heart. Rowan deleted the message without responding. Instead, he gathered his things, the pendant secure in his pocket, and did something he hadn't done in years. He left the office before sunset. The little sweet corner was his first stop. Through the window he could see bakers preparing for closing time, but none had the honey-brown hair or graceful movements of the subway stranger. Inside, the scent of sugar and butter reminded him of childhood visits to his mother's kitchen. "Can I help you?" A young woman with dark curly hair and sharp eyes asked, her expression curious as she took in his expensive suit. "I'm looking for someone," he began, but something made him hesitate. Would it seem strange, even stalkerish, to describe a woman he'd briefly met on the subway? "Never mind. Could I get a box of whatever you're known for?" The woman, Harper, according to her name tag, studied him for a moment longer. "Our peach hand pies are pretty special. They're made fresh every morning. Peaches, like the scent that had lingered on the mystery woman's clothes. I'll take a dozen." As Harper boxed up the pies, Rowan noticed a child's drawing pinned to the bulletin board behind the counter. It showed a night sky full of constellations, signed in crayon, "To Mommy, love Theo." His heart rate picked up. "That's an interesting drawing." Harper glanced at it, her expression softening. "One of our baker's kids. He's obsessed with stars." She handed him the box, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And will that be all?" Rowan paid and left, knowing he'd found the right place but feeling strangely reluctant to reveal himself just yet. The pendant weighed heavy in his pocket as he drove home, the box of pies on his passenger seat filling his car with their sweet aroma. In his penthouse that night, he sat on his balcony, the city lights below competing with the stars above. He bit into one of the peach pies, and the taste transported him to another time. Sunday mornings with his mother, the kitchen warm and bright. Love as simple as shared breakfast and gentle hands showing him how to crimp dough edges. The pendant caught the starlight, its silver surface reflecting pinpoints of light. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow, he would return it. But for now, he let himself remember what it felt like to have a sleeping child trust him enough to rest against his shoulder, to have a woman look at him with simple gratitude instead of calculation. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Olivia. Another pull back to his carefully controlled world of business deals and power plays. But for the first time in years, that world felt hollow compared to the weight of a small silver pendant and the memory of flour-dusted jeans and sleepy green eyes. The stars wheeled overhead, telling stories he'd forgotten how to read. Somewhere in Savannah, a little boy named Theo was probably looking up at these same stars, missing his pendant, while his mother worked late in a bakery that smelled of peaches and possibility. Rowan Blackwell, who had built his life on careful planning and emotional distance, found himself doing something completely uncharacteristic. He made a wish on a falling star. "But Mommy, we've looked everywhere." Theo's bottom lip trembled as Ivy helped him get ready for school. 3 days had passed since the pendant disappeared, and her son's usual brightness had dimmed considerably. "Grandma gave it to me," she said. "She said it would help me find my way home." Ivy's heart clenched as she knelt before him, straightening his little collar. "I know, baby, and we're not giving up." She touched her own star pendant, an identical match to his lost one. The pair had been her mother's final gift to them. "Remember what Grandma used to say about the stars? That they're always there, even when we can't see them," Theo recited, his green eyes brightening slightly. "And that's right, and your pendant is out there too. We just have to keep looking." The morning commute felt different now. Ivy found herself scanning every face on the subway, hoping to spot the kind stranger from that day. She'd retraced their steps countless times, filed a report with the transit authority, and put up notices in every shop along their route. Each time the train doors opened at their stop, she lingered a moment longer, searching. "You're going to miss your stop if you keep daydreaming," a warm voice commented. Harper slid into the seat beside her, offering a paper cup of coffee. "I saw you walk past the bakery 3 times yesterday. Still looking?" Ivy accepted the coffee gratefully. "Is it that obvious?" "Honey, everything about you is obvious. You wear your heart on your sleeve. It's what makes you special." Harper's dark eyes softened. "And what makes me worry. You're not still thinking about Mr. Tall, Dark, and Expensive from the subway, are you?" "Of course not." Ivy took a sip of coffee to hide her expression. "I'm thinking about Theo's pendant." "Uh-huh." Harper's knowing look made Ivy squirm. That's why you've been perfecting your hair every morning before getting on the train. For the pendant, Ivy touched her honey-brown hair self-consciously. She had been wearing it down more often lately, letting it fall in soft waves instead of her usual messy bun. It's just, he was kind. You don't find that often in this city. Kind enough to let you drool on his $1,000 suit. I did not drool. Ivy's cheeks flamed as other passengers glanced their way. Lowering her voice, she added, "Besides, it doesn't matter. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly in the market for anything. Theo comes first. Speaking of your little astronomer," Harper changed the subject smoothly. "How's he holding up?" Ivy's smile faded. "He tries to be brave, but last night I heard him telling his stuffed animals that maybe the stars were mad at him for losing their map." She blinked back sudden tears. "Mom always said those pendants would keep us connected, even after she was gone. Now half of that connection is just gone." The train slowed for their stop, and both women stood. As they made their way to the little sweet corner, the morning sunlight caught the glass towers of the business district, making them shine like mirrors. Ivy found herself wondering if her mystery man worked in one of those buildings, moving through a world as far from her own as the stars themselves. The bakery was already humming with activity when they arrived. The morning rush would start soon, and they had dozens of orders to fill. Ivy tied on her apron, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of measuring, mixing, and baking. Around mid-morning, the bell above the door chimed. "I'll get it," Harper called, wiping her hands on her apron. Ivy barely looked up, focused on piping delicate rosettes onto a birthday cake. "Welcome to—" "Oh." Harper's voice held an odd note that made Ivy glance toward the counter. Her heart stopped. There he stood, even more impressive in daylight. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his presence commanding enough to make the small bakery feel suddenly inadequate. But it was his eyes that caught her, steel blue and searching, scanning the shop until they found her. Recognition flickered across his face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ivy was acutely aware of the flour on her cheeks, the wisps of hair escaping her hastily arranged bun, the stark contrast between his world and hers. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice carrying across the space between them. He took a step forward, then stopped, as if unsure of his welcome. "You're the man from the train," Harper said, her tone carrying a warning that Ivy knew all too well. "The one who let my friend use you as a pillow." A slight smile touched his lips. "I am." He reached into his pocket, and Ivy's heart leaped, but he only pulled out his wallet. "I came for more of your peach pies. They were memorable." Ivy's hopes crashed. Of course, he wasn't here about the pendant. Why would he be? She turned back to her cake, blinking rapidly. "Ivy makes those," Harper said, and Ivy could have strangled her friend for drawing attention back to her. Every morning, fresh before dawn. "Ivy," he repeated her name softly, testing it. "It suits you." The warmth in his voice made her look up again. He was watching her with an intensity that made her hands tremble slightly. "Thank you," she managed, "for the pies. And for that morning. We don't usually make a habit of falling asleep on strangers." "More's the pity," he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Then, louder, "I'm Rowan Blackwell." The name hit her like a physical force. Everyone in Savannah knew the Blackwell family. Old money, huge influence, the kind of wealth that shaped cities. She just used a billionaire's shoulder as a pillow. "Mr. Blackwell," a new voice interrupted. Oliver Wright, his CFO according to the business pages, appeared in the doorway. "The investors are waiting." Something like frustration crossed Rowan's face. Gone so quickly, Ivy thought she might have imagined it. He reached into his pocket again, hesitating for a fraction of a second. "The pies," he said finally, placing several bills on the counter. "A dozen, please. I'll send someone to pick them up later." As he turned to leave, Ivy found her voice. "Mr. Blackwell." He paused, looking back. Do you take the subway often?" His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Not usually, but I'm finding myself drawn to new routines lately." After he left, Harper rounded on Ivy. "Girl, what was that?" "What was what?" "That. The tension. The looks. The way he kept reaching for his pocket like he wanted to say something else." Ivy shook her head, returning to her cake. "It doesn't matter. He lives in a different world, Harper. One where people don't lose precious family heirlooms or work 2 jobs to make rent. But later, As she piped roses onto perfect circles of pastry, she found herself thinking about the way he'd said her name, the way his eyes had searched her face like he was trying to memorize it, the strange hesitation when he'd reached into his pocket. When his assistant came to collect the pies, Ivy slipped an extra one into the box, her latest experiment, a peach pie with a constellation pattern cut into the top crust. She told herself it was just professional pride, not hope that he'd understand the message written in sugar and stars. That evening, as she walked Theo home from Mrs. Wilson's, her son's small hand in hers, he looked up at the emerging stars and asked, "Mommy, do you think my pendant found someone to take care of it?" Ivy squeezed his hand, thinking of steel blue eyes and unspoken words. "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." Above them, the stars began to appear, one by one, like secrets waiting to be shared. And somewhere in a glass tower, a man in an expensive suit sat at his desk, holding a silver pendant up to the dying light, wondering if some things were worth more than all his careful plans. The constellation pendant sat on Rowan's desk like an accusation. Beside it, a half-eaten peach pie with star patterns cut into its crust reminded him of green eyes and flower-dusted cheeks. He'd been staring at both for the better part of an hour, board meeting minutes forgotten on his computer screen. "You look like hell," Oliver announced, walking into his office unannounced. "And you're eating pie for breakfast." Again. Rowan didn't bother responding. He'd barely slept, spending most of the night on his penthouse balcony, remembering the way Ivy's voice had trembled when she asked if he took the subway often. "The New York investors are getting anxious," Oliver continued, dropping into a chair. "They want to know when you're moving up there to oversee the expansion. I haven't decided if I'm taking the position." The words surprised them both. Oliver leaned forward. "You haven't decided? Rowan, you've been planning this expansion for 2 years. It's your baby. Your chance to step out of your father's shadow completely." The pendant caught the morning light, throwing star-shaped reflections across his desk. "Things change. Things. Or people." Oliver's eyes narrowed. "You know Olivia's been telling everyone you're getting back together. That's why she's back in Savannah." Rowan's jaw tightened. "Olivia can tell people whatever she wants. It doesn't make it true." "No. Then why is she on her way up right now?" Before Rowan could respond, his office door opened again. Olivia Winters glided in, perfect in a designer dress that probably cost more than Ivy made in a month. The thought came unbidden, making him frown. "Darling," Olivia purred, ignoring Oliver completely. "We need to talk about the Kensington deal, and us." "There is no us, Olivia." Rowan's voice was cold. "And the Kensington deal is dead. Don't be dramatic." She perched on his desk, deliberately close to where the pendant lay. "We both made mistakes, but together, we could—" Her hand moved toward the pendant. Rowan snatched it up before she could touch it, the protective gesture more revealing than any words. Olivia's perfect eyebrows rose. "What's that? A new investment? None of your business." He slipped the pendant into his pocket, where it had lived for the past 4 days. "Was there something specific you needed?" "The charity gala tonight," she said smoothly. "You need a date. Someone who understands your world, your obligations. Someone who can help you navigate the New York social scene when you take over the expansion." "I have a previous engagement." "The gala is mandatory for all board members," she reminded him. "Your father insisted." The mention of his father made Rowan's expression harden. Richard Blackwell's presence still loomed over the company, even years after stepping down. His expectations weighed on Rowan like chains. Expectations of corporate success, of an appropriate marriage, of maintaining the Blackwell legacy. "I'll be there," he said finally. "Alone." Olivia stood, smoothing her dress. "We'll see." She walked to the door, then paused. "Oh, and darling, you have crumbs on your tie. Not very CEO-like." After she left, Oliver whistled low. That woman could freeze hell. "She already did," Rowan muttered, remembering finding her with James Preston, his former partner, discussing how to use their relationship to gain control of key company shares. His phone buzzed. Lucy, his assistant, Mr. Blackwell. The little sweet corner called. "They have a special order ready for pickup." He hadn't ordered anything, but he remembered Ivy's hands, graceful as they piped roses, and the way she'd looked up at him through her lashes. "I'll get it myself," he said, already standing. "The board meeting starts in 20 minutes," Oliver reminded him. "Reschedule it." The drive to the bakery took exactly 12 minutes. Rowan spent each one acutely aware of the pendant in his pocket, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. But when he walked in, the counter was empty except for Harper, who regarded him with open suspicion. "She's not here," she said before he could speak. "Day off. Had to take her kid to a doctor's appointment." The disappointment hit harder than expected. "Is he all right?" Something in his tone made Harper's expression soften slightly. "Just a checkup, but since you're here." She disappeared into the back, returning with a box. "Ivy made these specially. Said they reminded her of that morning on the train." Inside were delicate pastries, each decorated with tiny constellations in sugar and gold leaf. The care and creativity evident in each one made his chest tight. "She's too good for you," Harper said bluntly. "She works 2 jobs to support her son. She bakes all night and still finds time to read him stories about stars. She's kind and real and perfect," Rowan finished quietly. Harper blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "She's at Memorial Park," she said finally. "They watch the stars there sometimes, when she can get off work early enough." Rowan placed several $100 bills on the counter. "For the pastries, and thank you." The park was only a few blocks away. He could see them as he approached. Ivy sitting on a bench, Theo on her lap, both looking up at the afternoon sky despite the stars not being visible yet. The sight made something in his chest ache. His phone buzzed. Messages from board members, from his father's assistant, from Olivia. The weight of expectations and obligations pressed down on him. The pendant felt heavy in his pocket. It would be so easy to walk over, return it, let the strange connection end before it became something he couldn't control, before it made him question everything he'd spent years building. Theo laughed at something Ivy said, the sound carrying across the park. Rowan's hand tightened around the pendant. Not yet, he thought. Not like this. He turned away, heading back to his car, to his meetings, to the life he'd chosen. But he couldn't shake the image of them on that bench, searching an empty sky for stars that weren't yet visible but were always, always there. That evening, at the charity gala, Rowan stood at the window of the grand ballroom, barely listening to the conversations around him. Olivia moved through the crowd like a shark through water, elegant and deadly. His father's friends discussed the New York expansion like it was already decided, but in his pocket, a silver pendant pulsed like a second heartbeat, and on his desk at home, a box of constellation-decorated pastries reminded him that sometimes the sweetest things in life weren't planned or calculated. They just happened, like falling asleep on a stranger's shoulder on a morning train. He left the gala early, driving to Memorial Park. The bench was empty now, but he sat there anyway, looking up at stars that seemed to be arranging themselves into new patterns, telling different stories than the ones he'd always known. The pendant caught the starlight, like it was trying to find its way home. Soon, he promised it silently, but not quite yet. Ivy hadn't meant to return to the park so late. After Theo's doctor's appointment and dinner at Mrs. Wilson's, she should have gone straight home. But something pulled her back to Memorial Park, where the city's lights dimmed enough to see the stars. Just a quick look," she whispered to herself, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the evening chill. The park was mostly empty, the usual families and joggers replaced by cricket songs and fireflies. She froze when she saw the figure on their usual bench. Even in the dim light, she'd recognize that silhouette anywhere. Rowan Blackwell, still in his perfect suit but somehow looking less polished than usual. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. Before she could retreat, he looked up. Their eyes met across the darkness, and something electric passed between them. "You came back," he said softly, his deep voice carrying in the quiet night. "I didn't expect anyone to be here." She hesitated, then gestured to the bench. "Do you mind?" He moved over slightly, a silent invitation. As she sat down, she caught the scent of his cologne mixing with something else, whiskey maybe, and a hint of peach. "The pastries," she blurted out, then blushed. "Did you like them?" A small smile touched his lips. "They were perfect. The constellations, they reminded me of something." Her heart skipped. Could he know about the pendant? But his next words dashed her hopes. "When I was young," he continued, looking up at the stars, "my mother used to take me stargazing. She'd tell me stories about each constellation, how the stars always find their way back to each other, no matter how far they drift. The vulnerability in his voice made her turn to study his profile. In the starlight, she could see the small scar through his eyebrow more clearly. What happened to her? Ivy asked gently. Cancer. I was 12. He ran a hand through his hair, confirming her earlier suspicion about its dishevelment. After that, my father decided it was time for me to grow up. No more stars, no more stories, just business plans and expectations. I'm sorry. She meant it. The pain in his voice echoed her own loss. My mother loved the stars too. She gave me and Theo matching constellation pendants before Her voice caught. Rowan's hand moved to his pocket, then stilled. Tell me about her. She was magic. Ivy smiled, blinking back tears. She could make anything feel special, even when we barely had enough to eat. She'd make up stories about how our simple dinner was actually a feast for fairy kings. She taught me to bake, said that creating something sweet was like creating a little piece of joy to share with the world. Is that why you became a baker? Partly. She pulled her cardigan closer. Mostly it was necessity. When I got pregnant with Theo, I needed work fast. The little sweet corner took a chance on me, taught me everything. Now it's more than a job, it's home. A comfortable silence fell between them. Above, the stars emerged one by one, like shy dancers taking the stage. You don't seem very comfortable in your home, Ivy observed quietly. Rowan looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Your office, your world, you wear it like armor. But sometimes you look like you're drowning in it. He was quiet for so long she thought she'd overstepped. Finally, he spoke. The New York office wants me to relocate, take over the expansion there. It's what I've been working toward for years. But lately I'm not sure if the life I've built is really mine, or just a collection of other people's expectations. He laughed softly. I can't believe I'm telling you this. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with strangers, Ivy said, though the word stranger felt wrong somehow. This man, who'd let her sleep on his shoulder, who appeared at her bakery with unspoken words in his eyes, who sat under the stars talking about mothers and memories, he didn't feel like a stranger at all. Is that what we are? Strangers? His question hung in the air between them. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. Mrs. Wilson, asking when she'd pick up Theo. I have to go. She stood quickly. My son, Theo, he said, and something in the way he said her son's name made her pause. He must miss the stars too. He misses a lot of things. She thought of the lost pendant, of all the times she'd had to say no to field trips or new books because rent was due. But he never complains. He's stronger than I am. I doubt that's possible, Rowan said quietly. Their eyes met again, and Ivy felt that same electric connection. In the starlight, with his defenses down, he looked younger, more real, more like someone who might understand what it's like to feel lost in your own life. Will you be here tomorrow? The question surprised them both. I have the late shift, she answered automatically. But sometimes I come here after, just to look at the stars. He nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. They were both being pulled back here, to this bench, to these moments between their separate worlds. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Ivy. She looked back. Thank you. For the pastries. For everything. She smiled. Thank you for letting us sleep on your shoulder that day. Not many people would make constellations out of sugar just to say thank you. The warmth in his voice followed her all the way to Mrs. Wilson's house, where Theo was already half asleep on the couch, clutching a library book about space. Mommy, he mumbled as she carried him home. Did you find any stars tonight? Ivy thought of steel blue eyes softened by starlight, of shared grief and quiet understanding. Yeah, baby, I think I did. That night, she dreamed of constellations rearranging themselves, forming new patterns, telling different stories. In her dream, a silver pendant hung in the sky like a moon, just out of reach but somehow promising to find its way home. Miles away in his penthouse apartment, Rowan Blackwell held that same pendant, watching the city lights below. His phone was full of messages about New York, about the expansion, about Olivia and expectations and the life he was supposed to want. But all he could think about was the way Ivy's eyes sparked when she talked about her mother, about baking, about creating joy. How different it was from the calculated ambition he saw every day in his world. How much more real it felt. The pendant caught the light from his window, throwing star-shaped shadows on his wall. Soon, He thought again, but not yet. Not until he figured out if he was brave enough to follow the new constellations forming in his own heart. Olivia Winters didn't become one of Savannah's most formidable businesswomen by ignoring details. Standing in the little sweet corner, watching Rowan buy yet another box of peach pies, she noticed everything. The way his eyes lingered on the honey-haired baker, the slight softening of his usually stern expression, the familiar way the curly-haired counter girl treated him. "Your usual order, Mr. Blackwell?" Harper asked, her tone carrying a hint of challenge that would have gotten any other employee fired from a high-end establishment. "Please." Rowan's voice was warmer than Olivia had heard it in months. "And is day shift?" Harper replied to his unfinished question. "She'll be here until 3. Olivia's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her designer handbag. "Interesting." After Rowan left, without noticing her watching from across the street, Olivia entered the bakery. The bell's cheerful chime contrasted with her sharp smile. "Welcome to Little Sweet Corner," Harper said, her friendly tone cooling several degrees. "What can I get you?" "Information." Olivia placed her bag on the counter. "About Rowan Blackwell's recent interest in your establishment." Behind Harper, Ivy emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron and a smudge of chocolate on her cheek. She froze when she saw Olivia, recognition and something like fear flickering across her face. "We don't discuss our customers," Harper said firmly. "No?" Olivia raised an perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Not even when discussing them could be profitable." She opened her bag, but before she could reach for her checkbook, Harper cut her off. "Lady, I don't care if you're offering the deed to all of Savannah. We don't gossip about customers here. Now, would you like to order something? Or should I show you the door?" Ivy stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'll handle this, Harper." She met Olivia's calculating gaze. "I know who you are, Miss Winters. If you have questions about Mr. Blackwell, shouldn't you ask him directly?" "Oh, I have, but Rowan's been distracted lately, missing important meetings, canceling dinner plans, spending time in public parks after charity galas." Olivia's smile turned predatory. "Very unlike him." "I wouldn't know," Ivy said quietly. "I just make his pies." "Do you?" Olivia stepped closer. "Tell me, what do you hope to gain here? Money? Status? A ready-made father for your little boy?" The color drained from Ivy's face. "You've been investigating me." "Of course I have. Rowan might be temporarily charmed by your quaint situation, but he has obligations, a destiny. The New York expansion needs his full attention, not whatever little drama you're creating." "That's enough." Harper moved to stand beside Ivy. "Get out." "Gladly." Olivia adjusted her silk scarf. "Just remember, Rowan Blackwell isn't meant for simple pastries and stargazing. He belongs in boardrooms and penthouses, with someone who understands his world." After she left, Ivy gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "She knows about the park." "Hey," Harper touched her arm. "Don't let her get to you. She's just marking her territory like some designer-clad hyena." But Ivy's mind was racing. Had someone seen them that night on the bench? Had they really been that careless? And how did Olivia know about Theo? "Maybe she's right," Ivy whispered. "What am I doing, Harper? He's Rowan Blackwell. He's moving to New York. He's a man who comes to a small bakery every day just to see you smile." Harper interrupted. "A man who looks at you like you're every constellation in the sky." Before Ivy could respond, the kitchen timer buzzed. Work, at least, was simple. She lost herself in measuring, mixing, creating. But every time the bell chimed, her heart jumped, torn between hoping it was Rowan and dreading another confrontation. Across town, Rowan sat in yet another board meeting, absently touching the pendant in his pocket. The presentation about the New York expansion droned on, but his mind kept drifting to the way starlight had caught in Ivy's hair. "Mr. Blackwell?" The presenter paused. "Your thoughts on the timeline?" Rowan straightened. "Continue." His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "We need to talk about your little baker, and what your father would think of this distraction." Something cold settled in his stomach. Another message followed. "Dinner tonight. The Grove. 8 p.m. Don't be late." The pendant felt heavier than ever. He should have returned it days ago, should have kept his distance, should have stuck to his carefully planned life. But the thought of never again seeing Ivy's eyes light up when she talked about creating joy. "Mr. Blackwell," Lucy appeared at his office door after the meeting. The New York team needs your decision by Friday. Friday, 2 days away. He looked out at the Savannah skyline, at the historic buildings where Spanish moss draped like memories of simpler times. Cancel my dinner with Olivia tonight, he said suddenly, and get me everything you can find on the Little Sweet Corners financial situation. Lucy's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. And if Ms. Winters asks, tell her I'm preparing for New York. The lie tasted bitter. I'll be out of the office this afternoon. The sun was setting when he parked near Memorial Park. Their bench, when had he started thinking of it as theirs, was empty, but he sat anyway, turning the pendant over in his hands. I thought I'd find you here. Oliver's voice made him look up. His friend settled beside him with a sigh. Olivia's on the warpath. Says you're throwing away everything for some baker and her kid. I haven't thrown away anything, Rowan said quietly. Yet. But you're thinking about it. Oliver studied him. You know, I haven't seen you look this alive since before your mother died. Rowan closed his eyes. I don't know what I'm doing, Oliver. Yeah, you do. You're finally waking up. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Before Rowan could answer, a small voice called out across the darkening park. Look, Mommy. It's the man from your special pies. His heart stopped. Theo ran toward them, green eyes bright with excitement, while Ivy followed more slowly, looking uncertain. I'm sorry, she said quickly. We can go. Stay. The word came out more forcefully than he intended. Softer, he added. Please. Oliver stood, hiding a smile. I'll see you tomorrow, boss. As he passed Ivy, he whispered something that made her blush. Your friend seems nice, she said, sitting carefully on the opposite end of the bench while Theo explored nearby. Oliver's known me since we were kids. Rowan hesitated. And he knew me before I forgot how to look at the stars. Theo darted back to them. Mommy says you like our pies. Do you like stars too? I know all the constellations, or I did before. His face fell. Rowan's hand tightened around the pendant in his pocket. Not yet, he thought again, but the excuse felt weaker each time. I used to love the stars, he told Theo. Maybe you could teach me again. The boy's entire face lit up. Really? Mommy, can we show him Orion? Please. Ivy met Rowan's eyes over her son's head. In the gathering darkness, he could see the same question he'd been asking himself. What are we doing? But as Theo excitedly pointed out constellations, as Ivy's soft laugh joined her son's, as the night wrapped around them like a blanket of possibilities, Rowan realized something. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. His phone buzzed again. Probably Olivia's or the New York team, or his father's lawyers. He ignored it, choosing instead to listen to a 5-year-old explain how stars find their way home. The pendant pulsed in his pocket like a second heartbeat, reminding him that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we've lost our way, and let someone else help us find it again. The morning everything changed started like any other. Ivy was elbow-deep in pie dough when Harper burst into the kitchen, her face pale. Turn on the news. Now. Ivy wiped her hands, reaching for her phone. The local business news channel was running a headline that made her stomach drop. Blackwell Enterprises announces major restructuring. CEO Rowan Blackwell to lead New York expansion immediately. The camera cut to Olivia Winters, perfectly poised in a red designer dress, speaking to reporters outside Blackwell Tower. What, as Mr. Blackwell's personal and professional partner, I can confirm that we'll be relocating to New York next week. This exciting new chapter. The phone slipped from Ivy's numb fingers. Harper caught it, quickly turning off the broadcast. Ivy, I have to get these pies in the oven. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The morning rush will start soon. Forget the pies. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? Ivy turned back to her dough, kneading it with more force than necessary. Mr. Blackwell is a customer. Nothing more. A customer who spends every evening with you and Theo at the park. Who looks at you like what, Harper? Like he'd give up his entire life's work for a baker with a second-hand car and more debt than dreams. The dough tore under her fingers. I'm not stupid. I knew who he was from the start, but knowing hadn't stopped her from falling, hadn't stopped her from seeing the way he softened around Theo, the way his laugh became more real each evening they spent together, the way he seemed to shed layers of his corporate armor under the stars. The bell above the shop door chimed. Harper went to check, returning moments later with a thick envelope. It's from Blackwell Enterprises, she said quietly. Inside was a letter on expensive letterhead, along with several documents. Ivy's hands shook as she read, "Dear Ms. Monroe, in recognition of your establishment's unique contribution to our corporate environment, Blackwell Enterprises would like to offer you an exclusive contract to supply our New York offices." The amount listed made her gasp. It was more than she made in 2 years. "There's more," Harper said, pulling out another document. "They're offering to buy the Little Sweet Corner, to make it a chain." Ivy sat heavily on a flower-covered stool. "He's trying to buy me off, or give you a way to follow. To New York, with Theo." Ivy laughed bitterly. "To watch him play family with us between board meetings until he remembers who he really is." The kitchen timer buzzed, making them both jump. As Ivy pulled perfect golden pies from the oven, she tried not to think about how they'd started all this. A sleepy morning, a kind stranger, a lost pendant. Her heart stopped. The pendant. All this time, had he? The shop door chimed again. This time, Oliver Wright walked in, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "Miss Monroe?" He glanced at Harper, who crossed her arms defensively. "Could we speak privately?" In the small office behind the kitchen, Oliver got straight to the point. "He doesn't know I'm here. About the contract. The offer to buy. That was Olivia. She thinks if she gives you a better option, you'll disappear quietly. And what does Rowan think?" Oliver ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of Rowan that it hurt. "He's a mess. The New York thing, he tried to delay it. But his father called in the board. They gave him an ultimatum. Take the position or lose his place in the company completely. It's his dream," Ivy said softly. "The expansion, he told me, was his dream. Now," Oliver shook his head, "now he sits in his office holding a silver pendant and staring at nothing. The world seemed to tilt. He has it, all this time. He wanted to return it, but I think he was afraid." "Of what?" "That once he did, there'd be no more excuses. No more reasons to see you. No more pretending he wasn't falling in love with a baker and her stargazing son." Ivy pressed her hands to her face, fighting tears. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because in 20 years, I've never seen him care about anything the way he cares about you and Theo. And because in 48 hours, he's leaving for New York unless someone gives him a reason to stay." The silence that followed was heavy with possibilities and fears. Finally, Ivy looked up. "I can't ask him to give up everything." "Maybe," Oliver said gently, "you should let him make that choice." After he left, Ivy went through the motions of her day. She baked, she served customers, she helped Theo with his homework when Mrs. Wilson brought him by. But her mind kept returning to the pendant, to starlit conversations, to the way Rowan's eyes lit up when Theo talked about constellations. That evening, she took Theo to the park as usual. Their bench was empty, but she could feel Rowan's absence like a physical ache. "Mommy?" Theo looked up at her with serious eyes. "Is the Starman going away?" The nickname caught her off guard. "What?" "That's what I call him in my head, because he knows about stars like Grandma did, and he makes you smile like when you look at her picture." Ivy pulled him close, breathing in his sweet, little boy scent. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, baby. Like when you chose me instead of college." Her heart clenched. "Who told you about that?" "I heard Mrs. Wilson talking. She said you gave up everything for me." His small face was troubled. "Is the Starman giving up everything too?" Before she could answer, a familiar figure appeared at the park entrance. Rowan stood there in his perfect suit, looking somehow lost despite his commanding presence. Their eyes met across the darkness. In his hand, something silver caught the starlight. "Mommy," Theo whispered, "I think it's time to catch a falling star." Above them, the night sky seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if two people from different worlds could find the courage to rewrite their constellations. Time seemed to freeze in Memorial Park as Rowan and Ivy stared at each other across the gathering darkness. The silver pendant glinted in his hand like a captured star, holding all their unspoken words. "Starman!" Theo broke the spell, jumping up from the bench. "You came back." Something flickered across Rowan's face. Pain, longing, or maybe both. He walked toward them slowly, as if afraid they might disappear. "Theo," Ivy touched her son's shoulder. "Baby, could you go play by the fountain for a few minutes? Stay where I can see you." The boy looked between them, understanding more than a 5-year-old should. "Are you going to fix the stars?" "We'll try." Rowan answered softly, the first words he'd spoken. Once Theo was out of earshot, silence fell again. Ivy stared at the pendant, her mother's final gift, now resting in the palm of a man who held her heart just as precariously. How long? She finally asked. Only since that first morning on the train. His voice was rough. I tried to return it so many times, but then I'd have no reason to see you again. He laughed without humor, as if I needed a reason beyond wanting to spend every moment in your light. I saw the news. Ivy wrapped her arms around herself. Congratulations. You and Olivia must be very excited about New York. Ivy, did you laugh about it? The simple baker who actually thought, her voice cracked. Was this all just a game to pass the time before your real life began? Never. The fierceness in his voice made her look up. His eyes burned with an intensity that stole her breath. Nothing in my life has ever been more real than the moments I've spent with you and Theo. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne mixing with the night air. Olivia means nothing to me. The press conference and the announcement, it was all her manipulation. She thinks she can force my hand, make me choose the life everyone expects me to want. And what do you want? You know what I want. He held out the pendant, starlight catching its delicate patterns. I want mornings that smell like peaches and sugar. I want to learn the constellations from a 5-year-old who sees magic in everything. I want to sit on this bench every night and listen to you talk about creating joy. Tears spilled down Ivy's cheeks. We're from different worlds, Rowan. No. He touched her face, brushing away a tear with his thumb. We're from the same world. I just forgot that for a while. Got lost in boardrooms and balance sheets until a sleeping woman and her son reminded me what really matters. Your company can survive without me, or with me running it from here. I don't care anymore. Your father has controlled my life long enough. His hand shook slightly as he placed the pendant in her palm, closing her fingers around it. My mother used to say that love was like starlight. It travels across impossible distances just to reach us. I didn't understand what she meant until I met you. A small gasp made them both turn. Theo stood nearby, eyes wide as he recognized his treasure. You found it, he whispered. You found Grandma's stars. Rowan knelt to the boy's level. I did, and I've been keeping them safe until I was brave enough to follow where they led. Theo took the pendant, clutching it close, but instead of putting it on, he looked thoughtfully between the adults. Grandma said the stars help lost people find their way home. Are you lost, Starman? I was. Rowan's voice was gentle. For a very long time, but I'm not anymore. Because of me and Mommy. Yes, because of you and your Mommy. Theo's face lit up. Then, with the simple logic of childhood, he asked, So you're staying, to be our family? Theo! Ivy's heart clenched. Baby, it's not that simple. Why not? Rowan stood, taking her hands in his. Why can't it be that simple? Because you have obligations. A life in New York. I have a life right here. He squeezed her hands. If you'll let me be part of yours. Before she could respond, voices carried across the park. Oliver, calling Rowan's name, and Harper, slightly out of breath. The board called an emergency meeting, Oliver said as they reached the bench. Your father's there. Let him wait, Rowan started to say, but Ivy pulled her hands away. Go, she said softly. You need to face this. Really face it, not just run away with us in some romantic gesture. Ivy, she's right, Harper interjected. If you're serious about staying, about them, you need to handle this right. Rowan looked at Theo, still clutching his recovered pendant, at Ivy, starlight catching the tears on her cheeks, at the bench where he'd finally remembered how to feel. Tomorrow, he said firmly. Meet me here tomorrow at sunset. I'll have answered to the board, to my father, to everyone who thinks they have a say in my life. And then, he touched Ivy's cheek one last time. Then I'm answering only to my heart. After he left with Oliver, Harper put an arm around Ivy's shoulders. You okay? No? Ivy watched Theo carefully putting on his pendant, his face peaceful now that his treasure was home. I think I'm falling in love with a man who's willing to give up everything for us. And I'm terrified. Of what? Of believing in something this big, this bright. She looked up at the stars, remembering her mother's words about finding their way home. What if we're not enough? What if he resents us later? What if he doesn't? Harper countered. What if this is your constellation finally aligning? Theo came back to them, taking his mother's hand. Mommy, can we get hot chocolate? To celebrate the stars coming home, Ivy managed a smile. Sure, baby. The stars coming home definitely deserves hot chocolate. As they walked out of the park, she glanced back at their bench. Tomorrow at sunset, everything would change, one way or another. The stars above seemed to twinkle more brightly, as if sharing a secret they'd known all along. In the distance, the lights of Blackwell Tower reached toward the sky like a modern constellation, but for the first time, they didn't seem so far away, so untouchable. Maybe Harper was right. Maybe some stars were meant to fall, only to find they'd been heading home all along. The Blackwell Enterprises boardroom crackled with tension. Rowan stood at the window, watching the sun rise over Savannah, while behind him, his father's voice filled the room with cold fury. Have you completely lost your mind? Richard Blackwell's hands gripped the back of his leather chair. Throwing away everything we've built for some small-town baker. Everything we've built? Rowan turned, his voice deadly calm. You mean everything you forced me to build after Mom died? When you decided that a 12-year-old boy's grief was inconvenient for the company image? The board members shifted uncomfortably. Olivia, seated at the far end of the table, smiled like a cat watching its prey struggle. Don't bring your mother into this, Richard warned. Why not? She's the reason I'm here. Rowan pulled the morning's financial reports from his briefcase. Take a look at these numbers, Dad. Really look at them. The New York expansion is a vanity project. Our core business is stronger than ever, right here in Savannah. The community trusts us, knows us. We don't need New York. The board has already voted, Olivia interjected smoothly. The announcement's been made. Your things are being packed as we speak. The board voted based on manipulated information. Rowan nodded to Oliver, who distributed new folders to each member. The real projections, showing both scenarios, New York versus expanding our presence here. As the board members reviewed the documents, Richard's face darkened. You've been planning this. I've been waking up. Rowan walked to the head of the table. For years I let you convince me that success only looked one way, that love was a weakness, that Mom's death meant I had to stop believing in anything I couldn't control. Rowan, Olivia stood, her voice honey-sweet. Think about what you're doing, about who you are. That's exactly what I'm doing. He faced the board. I'm Rowan Blackwell. My mother taught me that business without heart is just numbers on a page. My father taught me that control is power. But a woman who bakes joy into every pastry and a little boy who sees constellations in sugar crystals taught me something else. They taught me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves fall. The boardroom was silent. Richard Blackwell stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time. You'd give up everything? He asked quietly. For them? No, Dad. Rowan's voice softened. I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing everything that matters. Oliver cleared his throat. The numbers support local expansion. Our roots are here, and with digital infrastructure we can handle any New York clients remotely. One by one, the board members nodded. Olivia's face contorted with fury. This is ridiculous. He's throwing away his future for some woman who probably planned this whole thing. Did you know she's in debt? That she... Enough. Richard's voice cut through her tirade. He was looking at the photo on the boardroom wall. Rowan's mother on opening day of their first office, her smile radiant as she cut the ribbon. The board will revote, all in favor of maintaining headquarters in Savannah and pursuing local expansion under current leadership. Hands raised. Olivia stormed out, and for the first time in 15 years, Richard Blackwell smiled at his son. She would be proud, he said softly, of the man you've become. But Rowan was already heading for the door. The sun was climbing higher, and he had hours until sunset to prepare for the most important moment of his life. Across town, Ivy moved through her morning in a daze. The little sweet corner hummed with activity, but her mind was in Memorial Park, counting the hours until sunset. Earth to Ivy. Harper waved a hand in front of her face. Oh, you're about to overwhip that cream. Sorry. Ivy set down the mixer. What if he doesn't come? He'll come. What if he does come? What if he gave up everything and then regrets it? What if you stop what-ifing and read this? Harper thrust a newspaper at her. The headline made her gasp. Blackwell Enterprises announces commitment to Savannah. New York plans canceled. There's more, Harper grinned. Look who just bought the empty storefront next door. Ivy's hands shook as she read the property notice. Blackwell Enterprises, expanding local small business investment. Guess your star man made his choice. The bell above the door chimed. Mrs. Wilson entered with Theo back from their morning adventure. Mommy. Theo ran to her, constellation pendant bouncing against his chest. We saw them putting up new signs next door. Are we getting new neighbors? Before Ivy could answer, another customer entered. Richard Blackwell stood in her small bakery, looking both imposing and somehow uncertain. Ms. Monroe? He cleared his throat. Might I have a word? In the small office, Richard studied her silently. Ivy straightened her spine, refusing to be intimidated. My son is making a choice today, he finally said. A choice I don't fully understand. With all due respect, sir, it's his choice to make. Yes. Richard's expression softened slightly. You know, his mother used to say that love was like starlight. It travels across impossible distances just to reach us. Ivy finished quietly. Richard blinked. He told you about that. He tells me about her often. About the stars, the stories, the joy she found in simple things. And that's why he... Richard gestured vaguely. Your son is choosing love, Mr. Blackwell. Not just for me or my son, but for himself, for the man his mother always knew he could be. After Richard left, Ivy went up to the bakery's small roof garden. The sun was beginning its descent, painting Savannah's skyline in shades of gold and promise. Mommy, Theo had followed her up. Are you scared? She pulled him close. A little. Big dreams are scary sometimes. Grandma said scared is just excited in disguise. He played with his pendant. And the stars will always show us the way home. Ivy looked at her son, this wise little soul who had brought so much magic into her life, then at the sun, sinking steadily toward the horizon, toward their moment of truth. Come on, baby, she said, taking his hand. Let's go catch our falling star. They walked to Memorial Park together, the evening air sweet with jasmine and possibility. Their bench waited empty, but not for long. Not if love really was like starlight, crossing any distance to reach its destination. Above them, the first stars began to appear, writing a story that had begun on a sleepy morning train and was about to start its newest chapter. The sunset painted Memorial Park in shades of gold and rose as Ivy and Theo approached their bench. She'd changed 3 times before Harper insisted she wear what made her feel most like herself. Worn jeans, a soft blue blouse, and her mother's star pendant. Her honey-brown hair fell loose around her shoulders, catching the last rays of daylight. Look, Mommy, Theo pointed excitedly. The first star, but it wasn't a star. The light Theo spotted came from dozens of tiny lanterns, strung between the old oak trees around their bench. Each one cast a star-shaped pattern on the ground, creating a path of light through the gathering dusk. Do you like it? Rowan's voice came from behind them. When Ivy turned, her heart stopped. Gone was the perfect corporate armor. He wore dark jeans and a simple white shirt, his hair slightly tousled by the evening breeze. In his hands, he held a familiar baker's box. Starman, Theo ran to him. Did you make stars for us? I had help. Rowan knelt to the boy's level. Your mom once told me that creating something sweet was like creating joy to share with the world. I thought maybe creating light could work the same way. Ivy touched one of the lanterns gently. They're beautiful. Not as beautiful as you. Rowan stood, taking a step toward her. Both of you. He opened the baker's box, revealing a perfect peach pie with a constellation pattern cut into its crust, a mirror of the one she'd made him weeks ago. I've been practicing, he admitted with a slight smile. Oliver says I've gone through enough flour to bankrupt a small country. You baked? Ivy's voice caught. For us? I wanted to create something with my own hands, something to show you that I understand now. What really matters isn't in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's in moments like this, in the joy we create together. Theo tugged at Rowan's shirt. Does this mean you're staying? Forever? Rowan glanced at Ivy, his eyes full of question and hope. That depends on your mom, and you. But you chose us, Theo said with certainty. You followed the stars home. I did. Rowan set the pie on the bench and pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box. And I'm hoping home will choose me back. Ivy's eyes widened. Rowan. He opened the box, revealing not a ring, but a third constellation pendant, identical to the ones Ivy and Theo wore. Your mother gave you these to keep you connected, he said softly, to remind you that love finds its way across any distance. I had this one made to match, but I'll only wear it if you both want me to be part of your constellation. Tears spilled down Ivy's cheeks. You'd really give up everything. I'm not giving up anything. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I'm gaining everything. The board approved my plan for local expansion. We're converting the building next to the bakery into a community business center, with the little sweet corner as its heart. I'll run operations from here in Savannah, where I can come home every night to star stories and peach pies. And us? Her voice trembled. And you. Always you. He squeezed her hand. If you'll have me. Theo watched them with bright eyes. Mommy, remember what Grandma said about wishing on stars? Ivy laughed through her tears. That the best wishes are the ones your heart makes without you even knowing. Yeah. Theo touched his pendant. I think we all wished for the same thing. We just had to wait for the stars to line up right. Rowan's free hand moved to cup Ivy's cheek. Smart kid you've got there. He gets it from his grandma. Ivy leaned into his touch. She always said love was like starlight, traveling across impossible distances. Rowan finished. Just to reach us. Just to reach home, Ivy corrected softly. When he kissed her, the lanterns above seemed to glow brighter, casting their star-shaped light over all three of them. Theo clapped delightedly, then tugged at their joined hands. Can we have pie now? Starman's pie? They laughed, breaking apart but staying close. Rowan lifted the pendant from its box. What do you say, Theo? Should I join your constellation? The boy pretended to think hard. Only if you promise to keep making stars for us. And letting Mommy sleep on your shoulder sometimes. Deal. Rowan's voice was rough with emotion as Ivy helped him fasten the pendant around his neck. It settled against his chest, catching the lantern light like a promise. Later, as they sat on their bench sharing slightly imperfect but love-baked pie, Theo fell asleep between them, one hand clutching each of their pendants. You know, Rowan said quietly, I used to think I had my whole life mapped out. Every step calculated, every move planned. And now I know some of the best journeys are the ones that take us by surprise. The ones that start with a sleepy morning train and end beneath a sky full of possibilities. Ivy leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the mix of his cologne and the sweet scent of peach pie. Above them, real stars began to emerge, joining the light from their lanterns. Tell me again, she whispered. Tell me this is real. He turned to kiss her temple. It's real, it's messy and complicated and probably won't always be perfect, but it's real. You, me, Theo, our little corner of Savannah. This is home. Home, she repeated, the word tasting like joy on her tongue. They stayed there as night settled fully over Memorial Park. 3 pendants catching starlight, 3 hearts beating in a constellation of their own making. And if anyone passed by, they would have seen something rare and beautiful, a family finding its way home, 1 star at a time. In the years that followed, the story would become legend in Savannah. The billionaire who chose love over empire, the baker who created joy in every pastry, and the little boy who knew all along that sometimes stars fall just so we can catch them. The little sweet corner thrived, its window always displaying a special peach pie with constellations cut into its crust. And every evening, as the sun set, 3 figures could be seen walking to a certain bench in Memorial Park, their matching pendants catching the light like pieces of fallen stars finally home. They had created their own gravity, these 3, strong enough to hold them in orbit around each other. And on clear nights, when the stars shone brightest, you might hear a child's laughter mixing with deeper voices, sharing stories about love that travels across impossible distances, about hearts that find their way home, about the sweetest dreams being the ones that come true in their own perfect time. For in the end, their love story wasn't just written in the stars, it was written in sugar and starlight, in peach pies and promises, in the courage to fall and the joy of being caught. And that, perhaps, made it the sweetest story of all. The end. The little sweet corner buzzed with excitement on a warm Savannah morning. Through the expanded windows connecting it to the new community business center next door, morning light streamed in, catching the 3 silver constellation pendants displayed in a small frame behind the counter. Ready? Harper asked, adjusting Theo's bow tie. Now 6. He stood proudly in a miniature suit that matched Rowan's, his curls somewhat tamed for the occasion. Ready? He bounced on his toes. I've been practicing with the rings all week. From the small apartment above the bakery, now renovated but still cozy and filled with love, came the sound of laughter. Ivy stood in her simple white dress, her mother's pendant nestled in the hollow of her throat. while Mrs. Wilson put the finishing touches on her flower crown. "Your mother would be so proud," Mrs. Wilson whispered, tucking a stray honey-brown curl into place. The ceremony would be small, held in Memorial Park as the sun set. Their bench, now bearing a small plaque reading "Up Where Stars Fall," waited beneath strings of familiar star-shaped lanterns. In the bakery kitchen, dozens of peach pies cooled on racks, each with a constellation pattern cut into its crust, some made by Ivy's expert hands, others by Rowan's less practiced but equally loving ones. A year of practice had made him a decent baker, though as he often said, he preferred being the official taste tester. The Blackwell Business Center had transformed the neighborhood, filling empty storefronts with local entrepreneurs. But its heart remained the little bakery where love had first risen like warm bread, sweet and unexpected. Richard Blackwell, softened by a year of Sunday dinners with his new family, had finally learned to bake his late wife's chocolate chip cookies, much to Theo's delight. Even Oliver had found love, falling for Harper's sharp wit and fierce loyalty over countless cups of coffee and shared eye rolls at the main couple's starry-eyed glances. But most important was the change in their own constellation. Ivy's confidence bloomed like the roses she piped onto wedding cakes. Rowan's corporate armor had given way to rolled-up sleeves and flour-dusted jeans, his rare smile now a daily occurrence. And Theo? He still loved the stars, but now he knew that the brightest ones weren't in the sky. They were in the hearts of the family who had chosen each other, who had built a home where different worlds collided and created something beautiful. That evening, as Ivy walked toward their bench where Rowan waited, his eyes shining with love, she remembered another walk in another time, when she'd been searching for lost treasures and found so much more. "Mommy," Theo called out, holding up the rings. "Look, they're catching starlight." And they were. 3 simple bands engraved with constellations, ready to join the pendants that had started their story. After all, some stars fall so that others can rise, creating new patterns, telling new stories. This was theirs. The end. Based on Ivy and Rowan's exciting journey, here's a reflective question. In Under the Savannah Stars, we saw how one simple moment on the subway forever changed the lives of 2 people from completely different worlds. Rowan chose to follow his heart even if it meant rewriting his entire planned future, while Ivy had to trust that true love could overcome social differences. If you were in their shoes, would you have the courage to let fate guide your heart? Do you believe that there are encounters that are truly written in the stars? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.